Yes, yes, this is the actual book itself.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yes, it was dictated by Andre Louise through the
Yes.
media. Yes, this is the actual book itself.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yes, it was dictated by Andre Louise through
Yes.
the media. Yes, this is the actual book itself. There's a bit of an echo. Can you hear it? It's like I'm hearing
Yeah,
myself.
Yeah.
we are live now. It's just because of that.
Okay. All right. Well, we are always grateful for this technology so that we can live stream and record. And it is working absolutely fine. So let me first share my screen and then we'll start with a little prayer and we will kick it off. All right. It says disabled share.
Okay, I will try to fix it. Just give me a second.
Okay.
Can you try share again, please?
Okay. All right.
Fingers crossed.
Woohoo! Let's see. How do I do this? Oh, window. Okay, there. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You can see my screen now? All right. Let me just move this aside. Okay, I'll say a little prayer and then we'll get started. So let us just visualize being in the presence of the Almighty God and our benefactors, just for a brief moment. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this wonderful opportunity that we have to gather together as your children to study. And impoverished as we are, needy as we are truly, truly grateful that you have answered the call from our hearts to receive guidance, to receive counsel, to receive spiritual help, so that we can follow the best path to help us to have a successful incarnation and to improve ourselves. So Lord, we are really grateful for all of the sacrifices and hard work that went into the production of this book, getting it to us and, you know, allowing us the possibility to share it amongst ourselves and with others. It truly is a labor of love, and we really, really appreciate everything that you do. And we ask you, dear Lord, that as we study, we ask for your inspiration, we ask for your guidance, so that we not just discuss for discussion's sake or read for reading's sake, but that we truly assimilate and take to heart the guidance that are being shared, the experiences that are being shared with us, because it is truly relevant for our lives. So once again, dear Lord, thank you and bless everyone who has not been able to attend this session today. And with your permission, sweet Lord, we open the study. Thank you so much. All right, so the messengers. There's a saying that says, don't judge a book by its cover. And I'm sure a lot of us, we believe that, we understand the message there. But personally, I think that we can certainly judge a book by its introduction. Because the introduction lays the foundation. It's almost like a roadmap for what this book is all about, right? If you want to get a sense as to why you should read this book, read the introduction. If you want to understand what inspired the writer to write a book, read the introduction, right? So the point that I'm making is I believe that the introduction of any book is absolutely important. And this is the same here. So we're going to start off with the introduction. I'll read it in its entirety, and then we can go back through and discuss. What do you think about that idea? Just for the introduction.
Good idea.
Okay. This book describes some of the experiences of spirit messengers. Because the landscapes, observations, acts, and events it depicts seem so physical, many readers will undoubtedly conclude, according to old philosophical concepts, that, quote unquote, it's all a product of the human brain, unquote. One must realize, however, that the brain is the apparatus of reasoning, and that by way of the simple event of physical death, discarnate humans do not suddenly enter the realms of the angels. On the contrary, they continue to face their own conscience, struggling to enlighten their minds, and in a different vibratory sphere, they prepare to continue their journey toward perfection. No one can negate the laws of evolution. If a chimpanzee were to rise to the status of living in a palace and found a way to write to others at the same stage of evolution, it would find almost no fundamental differences to describe because of the similarities between it and its fellow creatures. It would tell other chimps about a more improved animal life, and perhaps the only aspect impossible for it to define would be the area of reason surrounding the human spirit. As for ways of life per se, the change would not be profoundly perceptible. Simple animal fur would find continuity in modern cashmeres and silks. The order of nature surrounding the jungle nest would be the same that provides stability to the human home. The cave will have been transformed into a stone building. The green meadow would be likened to the cultivated garden. The means of continuing the species would present nearly identical phenomena. The law of heredity would continue with minor modifications. The same tendencies would be displayed regarding nutrition. The unity of family kinship would reveal the same strong ties. Thus, the chimpanzee would only find it difficult to try to detail the problems of work, responsibility, an enriched memory, a purified sentiment, and spiritual growth. In short, all the problems related to the acquisition of reason. In light of that, there is no real justification for the amazement of those who read messages of the caliber of the ones that André Louise addresses to individuals who are devoted to their spiritual growth. Ordinary men and women are used to eagerly hoping for something extraordinary to happen. They forget that nature is not concerned with satisfying their individual particular point of view. Physical death is not an unbalanced leap. It is merely one evolutionary step. Like our chimpanzee, who discovered and ennobled animal life in the human environment, the human who, after his or her physical death, who merits entry into the exalted circles of the invisible, discovers an uplifted human life. Naturally, a great number of higher level spiritual problems await individuals there, challenging their understanding as they ascend sublimely toward the illumined realms of life. Progress does not grind to a halt at death. Souls move on incessantly, attracted by the light of immortality. However, the philosophical conclusions of this simple preface are not what have induced us to write it, but rather the need to disclose to our friend, the reader, holy opportunities for work during these trying times. I wanted to highlight this paragraph, but for some reason, my highlighter is not working. Not sure why. Happy are they who seek in the new revelation their place of service while on earth, their place in harmony with the will of God. Christian Spiritism does not offer humankind only an area of research and consultation to be tread honorably by the rare, studious individual. It does much more than that. It reveals a workshop of renewal where each consciousness in training must seek his or her rightful integration into the higher life through inner effort, self-discipline, and self-improvement. There is no lack of divine cooperation for the willing worker, and whoever observes the noble work of an Aniceto will realize that it is not easy for spirits to offer assistance to humans. Bringing the fraternal collaboration of the higher planes down to incarnate spirits is not some mechanical process based on principles of least effort. So that they may receive such aid, human beings cannot escape the imperative to wash the vessel of their hearts in order to receive the quote-unquote living water, to take off their worldly rags in order to put on the quote-unquote wedding garments of eternal light. Thus, happy at having finished our duty, dear reader, we present you with these new pages by André Louise. They consist of a partial report of 1 week of spirit work by messengers of the good as they work alongside incarnate humans. Above all, They portray the character of a conscientious emissary and generous benefactor in the person of Aniceto, and they stress the need for moral discipline for those who consecrate themselves to the noble activities of the faith in the arena of service. My friend, if you are seeking the spiritual light, if animal-like existence has wearied your heart, remember that in spiritualism, investigation always leads to the infinite in the realm of the infinitesimal, as well as in the sphere of the distant stars. And only the transformation of yourself in the light of higher spirituality will enable you to draw from the founts of the divine life. And above all, remember that these uplifting messages from the beyond are not meant to be a mere expression of emotion. Above all, they are intended for your understanding as a child of God, so that you will take inventory of your own accomplishments and truly hand yourself over to the responsibility of living in the presence of the Lord. Emmanuel, Pedro Leopoldo, Brazil, February 26, 1944. If I recall correctly, Emmanuel was the spirit guide of Chico Xavier, right?
Yes.
So Emmanuel has set the tone for us for how we are to receive this book, why this book was written, what is expected of us as incarnates when we study the messages that are going to, and the messages and the experiences that are going to be shared with us. And when I read this introduction, it makes me sit. It makes me feel as if Emmanuel is sitting right in front of me and he's speaking directly to my own conscience. And I have no choice but to listen to him, because I get the sense of seriousness, full of love, yes, but seriousness in that each and every single one of us need to, there comes a time where we have to pause for a minute, take stock of where we are in our spiritual journey as we can perceive it, and ask ourselves, where are we going? Am I taking my spiritual journey, my spiritual life seriously? And he has given us quite a few tips to remember as we read through the book. So let's start from the beginning. Now let's share our thoughts. So it's not just me talking, but how we really feel about what he's sharing with us. So he starts off by telling us that this is the experiences of spirit messengers. This isn't, as we know, this isn't just a fairy tale. Some people may read this book and think of it as a product of somebody's imagination. And we know differently. So again, as we read the accounts that are being given, at least this is just how my brain works. I don't know about you, but it's almost as if I'm visualizing being in their presence and they're saying to me, Ebony, this is what I experienced, right? So it goes on to say that because the landscapes, everything that we read about, it's going to seem so real we can relate to it so much that almost any one of us would conclude that this is a product of somebody's brain, right? Because it just seems so real. And he goes on to explain that, yes, I mean, if someone thinks like that, then we have to remember that the brain is the apparatus of reasoning. And when we die, we know that, yes, the physical brain is going to die, but we have the perispiritual brain, right? And so that brain, that spiritual brain, continues working. We are going to face our own conscience, he says. At whatever point we have reached in our evolution, whether we stagnated or we made some kind of progress, this is exactly where we're going to find ourselves on the spiritual plane. He used the term here, vibratory sphere. Right? On the contrary, they face their own conscience, struggling to enlighten their minds. And he goes on to explain that contrary to what a lot of people think, death is not the end of our evolution. We continue to progress, we continue to evolve beyond the grave. And evolution as a law of nature, as a law of the universe, as a law of God, applies to everyone. And we may deny it, but we cannot escape its workings in our lives. Any thoughts so far?
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind is that someone said, I think, so I exist.
Yes. Yeah.
So it is not my brain can think, then I exist. It is thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it makes sense. The brain, the apparatus of reasoning. It doesn't mean that it's the only apparatus.
Right.
Yeah.
And he specifically wants to remind us that we continue, that process of reasoning and thinking continues beyond the grave. And then he went on to use the analogy of a chimpanzee, just so that we can grasp the concept that he's trying to bring across to us. Sandra, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting because I read this introduction this afternoon. And to be honest, that analogy between the chimpanzee and I think humans, no? Yeah?
Yes, yes.
I'm so glad because we are going to have this conversation now because I didn't get, to be honest.
You didn't grasp it. Okay. Well, from what I understood is he is trying to tell us that when we discarnate, we're going to, again, it's based on our evolutionary level, but he's talking here about Andre Louis' experience as well as everybody else who presents in this book, right? Aniceto is named as one, but everybody else, they're sharing their experiences with us. And we ought not to be surprised by the experiences that they share with us, because they have obviously evolved somewhat and are living on a plane, on a spiritual plane that is more elevated than perhaps the plane that they lived on Earth. right? So, but regardless of the plane that they live on, wherever they live in the spiritual realm, all they can do is relate to us what they are experiencing. They cannot relate to us what is on a higher plane or lower than they are. Do you follow so far? So in other words, he's saying he used the chimpanzee to say a chimpanzee will remain a chimpanzee, right? And if you take the chimpanzee and you put it in a palace or an elevated plane, an elevated home, the chimpanzee will only be able to relate what it is experiencing from a chimpanzee perspective, right? From what the chimpanzee is experiencing. But when it comes to more elevated concepts that the chimpanzee yet do not understand, the chimpanzee would struggle. So concepts that human beings would be experiencing, for example, reasoning, the chimpanzee would not really be able to explain that to other chimpanzees. Does that make sense so far? So in other words, Andre Luis is only expressing what he is experiencing through his eyes, based on the progress that he has made and where he is on the evolutionary plane, on his evolutionary plane. And he's speaking to people at his level. Daniel, does that make sense? Do you have any other thoughts?
No, it totally makes sense. I think I agree with you. It's hard to describe something that you don't know yet.
Yes.
Kind of at the end of there's a part that says, consequently, there is no real justification for amazement of those who read messages of the caliber of the one that Andre Luis addressed to individuals who are devoted to spiritual growth. So
right. Yeah. Right. So in other words, he's saying those of us who understand what spiritual growth is all about, it's kind of not, this is what Andre Luis is experiencing. So we shouldn't be surprised and think that all of this is fiction. This is not reality.
Yeah. It says, like our chimp that discovered a noble animal life, the human environment, humans who merit entry to the higher cycles as of invisible after physical death discover a higher level for human life.
Yep, exactly.
So it's exactly like you described.
Right. So, and I agree with Emmanuel here. I always believe it's like, okay, if I am on level, I was on level 1 on Earth when I incarnated, or let me rephrase that. I incarnated as a level, I'm using this as an example, as a level 1 spirit. And based on, how I live, the progress that I made on Earth, I discarnated maybe as a level 2. My plane of existence would be on level 2, right? In the spiritual realm. So if someone on level 1 back on Earth is asking me my experiences, what I could only explain to them what I'm experiencing on level 2, right? And so those of us back on Earth shouldn't be shocked and surprised that Andre Luis is expressing himself from an elevated perspective. And so I get the message that this is what we should aspire to. Sandra, is it a little bit clearer for you?
Yes. I mean, okay. I'm taking few notes, because then, thank you.
Yes. And I think one of the reasons why he would have, Emmanuel would have gone out of his way to make this striking analogy is I suppose the responses when this book came out, the responses, or they anticipated the responses that people would have, you know, when they read. I mean, we haven't obviously gone through the chapters and so on, but when they read some of the things that are being talked about, it's almost like a step up from No Solar, right? So we can follow Andre's progress as a spirit in the spiritual realm, because he's obviously evolving. And here Emmanuel is telling us we shouldn't be surprised by that, because as spirits, discarnate spirits, we evolve, right? So yes, you've read No Solar, and the messengers is being shared by the very same spirit. Don't be shocked and surprised by, you know, the progress that he has made. This is natural. None of us can escape evolution, you know. All right, let's continue. So I think we can skip that entire paragraph about the analogy.
Yes.
Right? Danielle, you read the conclusion. In light of all of this, no real justification for the amazement. Danielle read that. We discussed that. Naturally, a great number of higher level spiritual problems await individuals there, challenging their understanding as they ascend sublimely toward the illumined realms of life. Progress does not grind to a halt at death. Souls move on incessantly, attracted by the light of immortality. We also discussed that. However, the philosophical conclusions of this simple preface are not what have induced us to write it. So why did they write this book? Here they're getting into the why. So they wrote this book because because of the need to disclose to us, to disclose to you, Daniel, to disclose to you, Sandra, to disclose to me, and anybody else who's going to read this book, the opportunities, the holy opportunities for work during these trying times.
Sorry. Trying times, I can understand as incarnations?
Yes, because we are at a state, you know, in our evolutionary progress on Earth where we are gradually evolving towards a planet of regeneration. And that obviously is going to cause a lot of turbulence, spiritually speaking, and we are already feeling it and seeing those things. I mean, this book was written when? In 1944, was it? I don't want to scroll back down to the 1944. So back then they were experiencing not as intensely as we experience it now, but they obviously were preparing people back then to get ready to work and to do what we can to evolve and to help others evolve and to move the planet along. Right? So this is why they wrote this book, basically say, knock, 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 hello, you guys have a lot of work to do, and there are ample opportunities for you on Earth if you only pay attention. We're going to show you some of these opportunities in this book. Make sense?
Makes sense. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Happy are they who seek in the new revelation, which is Spiritism, their place of service while on earth, their place in harmony with the will of God. So we're not here on a vacation. Many of us would say, okay, you know, in our prayers, Lord, what can I do? How can I be of assistance? How can I be of service? What can I do to not just improve myself, but to help others on their spiritual path? And Emmanuel is telling us here that each and every single one of us have an opportunity to serve, not just after we discarnate, but while we are still here. As a matter of fact, we're going to read quite a few accounts of mediums who discarnated, and they they actually failed at their task of being mediums. And so it's almost as if, you know, they're awakening those of us who are still here, saying to us, you mediums, don't make the very same mistakes that these other mediums made. Christian Spiritism does not offer humanity only an area of research and consultation to be tread honorably by the rare studious individual. So let's not just study just for studying's sake. Let's just not, you know, listen to a talk or show up at a presentation just because, you know, somebody invited us. It does much more than that. It reveals a workshop of renewal where each consciousness in training must seek his or her rightful integration into the higher life through inner effort, self-discipline, and self-improvement. I always think of Spiritism not as a religion, as some people do, or just as a science or a philosophy or just a study. But I think of it as culture, as a way of life, a way of living. And if you approach it from that perspective, I think it would be easier for us to do what Emmanuel is asking us here to do. Truly, truly engage in our spiritual development and see Spiritism as that opportunity, that tool that we have to help to really and truly get into the inner workings of ourselves, you know, and truly, truly engage the work of self-improvement. When we do that, I think it will be easier for us to achieve what he's asking us here. Thoughts?
No, yeah, so I'm just recalling these trying times. It's a workshop where you need to train your consciousness. You must have consciousness training situations. And self-discipline, the same. Self-improvement, the same.
Right.
Self-improvement situations and self-discipline situations. So it is elucidating a little bit more of the trying times as well. Not that it needs to be hard, it's just the tools are the workshop and the tools are there. We need to use them wisely.
Exactly.
Is the workshop of life, isn't it?
Right? And what do we do in a workshop? We build things. When things are broken, we fix them. We improve things, right? So I think that's one of the reasons why he used that word workshop. And I also think it's amazing that when we think of consciousness and training, we are given that image that we constantly have to improve. We have to work on ourselves. We're learning, we're growing. But at the same time, he's telling us that we have opportunities to work. So it's like a work study kind of situation. So we're studying, we're training, but we also working at the same time. There is no lack of divine cooperation for the willing worker. So we're not alone. If we truly, truly decide, put up our hands and say, I am going to do this. I'm ready to roll up my sleeve and I'm ready to get going, to do my part, to help, to work, to serve. When we are truly ready to do that, he's telling us that we have all of the assistance that we need. Help is going to come to us so that we collaborate and we work together. Whoever observes the noble work of an Aniceto will realize that it is not easy for spirits to offer assistance to humans. Sandra, go ahead.
Aha. Who is Aniceto?
Yes, we're going to find out about who Aniceto is. Aniceto is one of the spirit messengers.
Okay.
Yes, that we're going to find out about. Right, so, and in one of the chapters, or I think in several of them, we get to see a lot of how difficult it is for spirits to actually give us assistance, those of us who are still incarnated. They're there and they're trying, they're oftentimes shouting at us, literally, begging us, oh, Ebony, come and sit down and do some reflection. Reflect on your day. If only you would just reflect for a minute, you would be able to hear some of the things that we're telling you. But we are so busy with your work. You're so busy with this, with that, with the other. You're not hearing us. And so on and so forth, right? And I remember when I read several of those chapters for the first time, it was a real eye-opener. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know this. Okay, I'm going to pay attention. Please forgive me, because I don't want to make your work more difficult than it should be, you know? So we're going to read a couple episodes like that. Thus, happy at having finished our duty, dear reader, we present you with these new pages by Andre Luis. They consist of a partial report of 1 week of spirit work. So this entire book is a portrayal of 1 week of work experience that Andre had. 55 or 54 chapters, 52 chapters is the conclusion of 1 week of work.
Wow.
So a lot has happened in 1 week, right? So this is what we're going to be reading about. My friend, if you are seeking the spiritual light, if animal-like existence has wearied your heart, remember that in spiritualism, investigation always leads to the infinite on the realm of the infinitesimal, as well as in the sphere of the distant stars. And only the transformation of yourself in light of higher spirituality will enable you to draw from the founts of the divine light, the divine life. So when you truly, truly engage in the work that you have to do, that work of inner renewal, you're truly serious, are you going to find in other words, he's saying infinite possibilities are going to reveal itself to you. The realm of infinity is going to be revealed to you. Don't be shocked. Don't be surprised. As much as you open up yourself is as much as you're going to receive. As much as you prepare yourself to learn is as much as you're going to learn. So it's basically what you bring to the table. That's what you're going to get. And above all, remember that these uplifting messages from the beyond are not meant to be a mere expression of emotion. So let's not just ooh and ah, oh my gosh, you know, I can't believe this is just completely amazing. This is not the reason why they're sharing their messages with us. You know, they're not looking for our approval or our praise or worship in any way whatsoever. You know, it's just to induce us to really, really get serious about saying, yes, I want to serve. Yes, I want to work. And once we dedicate ourselves to that kind of work, you know, we're going to find so much other possibilities open to us. And that's really what they're encouraging us to do. You're not going to get tired on the journey. You're not going to feel that the task that you're doing is going to be like a chore. You're going to feel a lot of joy, a lot of satisfaction, a lot of self-fulfillment. So here it is, chapter 1. I think we have time to start it. We may not finish it, but we can start.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Chapter 1, renewal. Having disengaged myself from the lower ties that had bound me to earthly concerns, I felt a higher understanding now gladdening my spirit. Such liberation had not happened all at once, however. Deep down, I realized how difficult it had been for me to leave behind the surroundings of my home, and how hard it had been to bear my wife's lack of understanding and my beloved children's differences of opinion. I felt certain that selfless and powerful spirit friends had helped my poor and imperfect soul make such an important transition. So if we have any doubts as to whether Andre made some progress from Astral City, we now know that yes, he did. Previously, concern for my wife had tortured my heart incessantly, but now that I had come to accept the fact that she was deeply involved with her second husband, there was nothing left to do but to seek out other interests. Daniel, you remembered the troubles that he he went through just kind of accepting the fact that his wife had remarried, right? It was thus that, thoroughly amazed, I noticed my self-transformation as events unfolded. I was living the joy of self-discovery. Until now, I had been living like a mollusk tucked away in its shell, oblivious to the lofty splendors of nature as it crawls around in the mud. However, I was convinced that my grief had tilled my mental processes like a heavy hoe, whose thrusts I had not understood right away. That hoe had broken through the shell of my former corrupted sentiments and had set me free. My spirit body had been exposed to the sun of infinite goodness, and I had begun to see higher, reaching out to further distances. For the first time, I regarded my adversaries as benefactors. I had begun to visit my earth family again, no longer as master of the domestic circle, but as a worker who loves his job in the workshop to which life has assigned him. I no longer saw my wife as a companion who had failed to understand me, but as a sister whom I should help as much as my strength allowed. I refrained from regarding her second husband as an intruder who had changed my plans, but rather as a brother who needed the help that my own experiences could offer. I no longer considered my children as my property, but as very dear companions, and it behooved me to extend to them the benefits of my knowledge and to support them spiritually as much as I possibly could. After having been compelled to destroy my castles of unwarranted exclusivity, I felt another kind of love settling into my soul. I had been orphaned by earthly affections, but had become receptive to the higher designs that had traced out a different course for my destiny. I had begun to hear the profound and divine call of universal consciousness. Only now did I realize how far removed I had lived from the sublime laws that govern human evolution. Nature was welcoming me with raptures of love, and its voices were now much stronger, than those of my personal interests. Bit by bit, I had begun to reap the joy of listening to its mysterious teachings in the grand silence of things. Imagine that. Andre Luis is learning from nature. The simplest elements had begun to take an extraordinary meaning. The spirit colony that had generously taken me in was displaying new expressions of indefinable beauty. The rustling of a bird's wings, the whisper of the wind, the light of the sun seemed to reach into my soul, filling my thoughts with wondrous harmony. The spirit life, inexpressible and beautiful, had opened resplendent portals. Until now, I had lived in No Solar, like a sickly guest in a shiny palace. I had been so entirely wrapped up in myself that I was incapable of perceiving its enchantment and marvels. Spiritually uplifting conversation had become indispensable. I used to enjoy torturing my soul with memories of Earth. I used to appreciate the dramatic stories of various fellow spirits in struggle, remembering my own case and becoming infatuated with the prospect of clinging once again to my Earth relatives and resorting to such inferior ties. But now, I had completely lost my passion for less than worthy matters. Even the stories told by patients in the chambers of rectification did not hold as much interest as before. Daniel, you remember that experience that he had, right? And one of his mentors was telling him he shouldn't be asking them such personal questions. So he evolved from that. I no longer desired to know where those unfortunate creatures had come from, and I no longer pried into the adventures they had experienced in the lower zones. Instead, I sought out brothers and sisters in need. I wanted to know how I could be useful to them. Perceiving this profound transformation, Narcisa said to me one day, "Andre, my friend, you have been undergoing mental renewal." That's what it is. Mental renewal. This is what Andre was describing for us in all of what we just read. During such times, extreme troubles of a spiritual nature assault our hearts. Remember to meditate on the gospel of Jesus. I know that you have been experiencing inexpressible joy in your contact with universal harmony after having left your whimsical designs behind. But I also know that along with the roses of joy and the new paths that are opening up to your hopes, there have been thorns of weariness on the edges of the old inferior roads that you are leaving behind. Your heart is a chalice illuminated by the rays of the divine dawn, but it has been emptied by the worldly sentiments that filled it for so many centuries. In a ways, Andre has emptied his cup somewhat. I myself could not have formulated such an exact description of my spiritual state. Narcisa was right. Supreme joy was indeed flooding my spirit, but it was coupled with an unfathomable sensation of weariness regarding matters of a lower nature. I felt free of a number of heavy shackles, but I no longer had a home, a wife, or my beloved children. I frequently returned to my former home and worked there for the good of all, but I felt no real incentive. My devoted friend had been correct. My heart certainly was a luminous chalice, an empty one though. Her definition had touched me. Sensing my silent tears, Narcisa added, "Fill your chalice with the eternal waters of the one who is the divine giver. All of us, Andre, are bearers of the Christ plant within the soil of our hearts. During periods such as the one you are going through, it is easier for us to develop successfully if we know how to take advantage of the opportunities. As long as humans' minds are engulfed merely in reasoning and making calculations, the gospel of Jesus appears as nothing more than a collection of ordinary teachings to them. However, when their higher sentiments are awakened, they realize that the Master's lessons have a life of their own, that they reveal expressions unknown to their minds to the degree that they make the effort to edify themselves as instruments of the Father. When we grow in the Lord, His teachings also grow in our sight. Let us do good, my dear. Fill your chalice with the unction of divine love, since you have already felt the rays of the new dawn. Walk confidently into the day. And knowing my human temperament, an enthusiast of hectic work, she added kindly, "You have worked long enough here in the chambers where I have been preparing myself for my next life in the flesh. I will not be able to accompany you, but I believe you should take advantage of the new service courses at the Ministry of Communication. Many of our co-workers have been trained to lend help to incarnates. They work both in the visible and invisible realms, and all of them are supervised by worthy instructors. You might enjoy new experiences, learn a great deal, and make an excellent individual contribution. Why not give it a try?" Before I could thank Narcisa for this valuable suggestion, she was called to service in the chambers, leaving me overwhelmed by expectations that were different than I had previously had regarded my duties. How do we feel? What do we think about the first chapter so far? Andre sharing, trying to find the words. Sometimes I know that happens to us. He has experienced something dramatic, something transformational, and he's trying to express to us what he's feeling and what he went through. And his mentor summarized it beautifully in a few words, and she says, "Andre, you have been experiencing mental renewal." I want to be able to, I'm going to stop sharing because it's already, our hour is already up. So let me do this. I want to be able in this lifetime to have a conversation like that with my guardian angel through my intuition, through my thoughts. I want him to say to me too, this is how this chapter is making me feel. I want him to say to me one day, "Ebony, what you're thinking, what you're experiencing, that you're having a little bit of difficulty expressing is your mental renewal." That would make me feel as if I I'm doing the right thing and I just simply need to continue on that path.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't want to wait. I don't want to be a spiritist for spiritism's sake. You know what I mean? I don't want to be attending all these studies, reading all these books, showing these kinds of interests. Only at the end of this this life, on the other side, my guardian angel looks at me and he says, Ebony, I was trying to awaken you to a lot of responsibilities, a lot of opportunities that you had to renew yourself while you were still incarnate. But it's okay. You can continue making progress here. You know what I mean? I don't want, because so many people have been through that experience, and we are going to read about it in this book. So why should I let the experiences be in vain? This is just how I'm thinking. I don't want them sharing their experiences to fall on my deaf ears. Right? This is how this chapter is making me feel so far. Any last thoughts before we go?
No, I think you're correct on your way of thinking. In general, it's if you see all this mental process and having lighter and lighter relation with the members of our family, trying to do that, trying to engage with the nature in a positive way, feeling the perfume of the flowers, if you can, listen to the birds outside, and when possible, just take a look at the sky outside. It may be rainy, it may be windy, it may be, so enjoy what it's possible from the invites from the nature. So what is really dazzling is almost everything from the beginning of this chapter until now. It is possible to try to walk bit by bit on towards that direction, like you're saying, regardless of how much we're gonna make it. Different people, different mindsets, different opportunities, but it is a serious invite to living life in a more enjoyable way, even.
Yes, yes. I agree. And what always amazes me is I look at Andre Luis as a beacon of hope. I know I've said that so many times. You've heard me saying that so many times, Daniel. To me, he's a beacon of hope, because I always think about, wait a minute, he knew nothing about spiritism. As a matter of fact, this young man was an atheist. You know, when he transitioned, he ended up in the lower zones. And we're able to see his progress, the progress that he's making gradually. If we follow, we finished No Solar, we were able to follow through bit by bit. Here we are again with the messengers. Andre Luis wasn't, some elevated being. And so if he can do it, so can I. This is how I think, and this is how he inspires and he encourages me. I'm like, I can do this. Just like you said, Daniel, simple things like being willing to open up ourselves for nature to teach us. We can learn how to engage with the higher life and higher living through nature, right? We can learn so many things about the gospel just by observing nature. And Andre Luis had that experience. He shared it with us.
Sure.
Yeah, so this is doable, guys. We can do this.
We can.
All right, so let's somebody say a quick prayer and then we'll finish up. Who wants to say a quick prayer?
Yes, I can say the prayer.
Okay, really quickly.
Oh, dear Lord, Master Jesus, thank you so much for being together tonight, for the study, for the intuition, the happiness, and the hope. We are going to try to be together next week, so bless us, and then that we can have a very good evening and a very positive week. Thank you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Thank you.
So guys, remember, we can do this.
We can. Have a good evening.